Good morning.
Good morning.
Yeah, just about. Thank you for being here. Sue is going to.
Oh, shit. What am I going to? There's no, I've been told that it's exam day, so I'm off.
You should work.
What am I going to do?
Well, you know, actually, Sue and I were talking yesterday, and we're like, what are we going to talk about? What could we possibly talk about? And we threw a couple of ideas up in the air. But this idea kept on popping in my head, actually, after you and I talked about some of the possibilities. And so I wanted to talk to people a little bit about our own relationship. So Sue and I met last year. And she contacted me later, and we started working together. And one of the things that I noticed is that, at least on my end, so very quickly I felt connected to her. And I think sometimes when we talk about relationships, we talk about long-term relationships, you know, the relationships we have been with our loved ones. But it just occurred to me that every day of our lives, we connect with people, you know, like in the supermarket or in the restaurant, in the store. And so it was just really nice to notice that, Sue. It was really nice to notice that even though we didn't know each other at all, really, there was just such a feeling of joy and connection.
Are you letting me down gently or something?
Wow.
Our relationship, I'm feeling a bit uncomfortable.
And I think very quickly, you know, I was just touched by our willingness to be so open. I mean, really open with each other. And so I think there's something to notice about the connection that we can experience with someone that we just met, because we're both human beings and we share that in common. Want to say anything?
Yeah. I love what you just said, because even though you went back on what you said you were going to do. I'm getting used to it here. Because I laughed at the beginning because I thought that Gabriela was going to tell you about what a mess I was after she spoke last year. And I don't know what she said, I can't remember. And it doesn't really matter. But I heard something in something that you'd said, and I felt this deep connection. And Gabriela was standing on the stage, so it wasn't as if we were talking one-to-one or anything. She was talking to everybody. And I felt this deep connection, and I came away in that moment, even though I was bawling my eyes out, literally. You see, there are other sides to me, where, you know, I just knew that I wanted to speak with you again. And we actually spent the break time speaking. And I think that and what you're saying is so true, that connection is so powerful, because we don't know each other really. I mean, I think we know each other a little bit now. But at the time, we certainly didn't know each other. I'd never met you. In fact, I won't tell you what I thought about you.
Are you?
Just a thought.
We're talking the tables here now, you see. No, seriously. You know, I just didn't know. I'd not heard you really speaking, so. And I thought, well, who is this Gabriela woman? You know, she's going to come and speak on the stage here. And I hadn't heard much about you. I'd heard little bits, and I'd seen that you'd been at Ticken once in London, but that was it. And I just went in there, I guess, with an open mind, and I heard something. And that, in that listening to you, was something that sort of, I don't know how to describe it, except it felt almost like I was going to say an electric shock, but then you'd think, ah! But not that sort of an electric shock, but you know, like a current running through someone. And I felt that very deeply. And I just knew in that moment, I've got to speak to Gabriela. And I think that that's, for me, I see that in so many things that I do. And then I don't see it in a lot of other things as well. You know, and I'll go in to speak to someone and I feel like there's no connection at all. But that's where I'm at, not where they're at, which is fascinating as well. So,
yeah. So how can anyone feel connected to someone that we really don't know? Right? Or how can we, like, I love you. How can you love someone that we haven't talked since probably the beginning of the year.
yeah, it's true.
You know,
Mind
so
you, she did proposition me yesterday. I told her after we were told we should be honest. Relationships are meant to be open and honest, and I have to tell you, we did talk about, just to show you the other side. We did talk about what we were going to speak about today. And as you see, she's gone back on her way. And I said to her, she said, well, what do you think, what do you know to speak about? I said, I don't know, I usually get my best ideas in bed. And she actually offered me. I mean,
I said, should we meet in bed? A meeting, that's all.
It's because you're famous.
That was my opportunity, you know.
I saw Trevor, he's got one of Jack's t-shirts, you know, that he bought, and it's got Jack Pransky 2016, his, you know, his world tour. So I think I'm going to have to start. You know.
I'll buy one.
Oh, thank you.
You're also So you know, I think that where we're moving towards is that you know, a lot of us often work with other people, and some of us work with people that we only have a short period of time with. You know, like we can teachers, or we're working with children, or you know, whatever. And at the end of the day, I think, in my experience, at the end of the day, is the human connection, the recognition that we and they are human beings, and that our essence is the same, and that really we just want the same thing. We want to have peace of mind. We want to feel well at the end of the day. We want to be happy. That we are really the same. I think people remember that. People remember the feeling. I remember the feeling. And that feeling comes from us, right? It's not the other person. It's not Sue, really. As wonderful as you are. And so I think what I was thinking, Sue, is really how this connection at this level is healing. And then you want to talk a little bit about your children, you know, and your, or whatever you want to talk about.
My children. I'm so glad they're not here.
Oh, whatever.
Actually, it's quite interesting because I don't know why this popped up in my head, but you're talking about my children. But my two youngest, I've had 5 children, and my 2 youngest have got Down syndrome. My daughter, our daughter, my husband's over there somewhere. lives away from home now. She lives in an apartment with some other girls and a house mother. And our son still lives at home. He's 15. I mean, he's not, you know, he's 15. His age is 15, but mentally he's much, much younger. And I think it's partly because we've treated him like the baby as well. So, and he's a boy. So what can you do? And it was so funny because he's always talking to me, you know, he tells us about, as he comes in the door every night, this is true, isn't it, Frank? Every night as he comes in the door, or wherever he's been, like when we go back, I can guarantee I shall have to tweet it out, what he's eaten for every single meal. Because that, to him, obviously, is the most important thing. So he'll tell me, oh, Mummy, I came, you know, I had this rice, this and this for lunch, whatever this is. And then I'll ask him different questions. And every so often he tells me about another kid, he goes to special school, and he tells me about another child in his class. And I say to him, and he's also got Downs. They don't all have Downs, but this other boy does. And this other boy, which is quite unusual for Downs, he can't speak. And I said to him, you know, what does he do? What does he say? He goes, oh. And what interests me, what fascinated me was that even, I mean, he laughed about it a bit, but it was like a laughter like, but that's okay laughter, you know, that's just how he is. And what fascinated me more than anything else is that he obviously understands him. You know, there's a connection there, there's something there that is behind all the words that we need to use, or we think we need to use, that is so deeply, I don't know, connecting, I don't know what, not the right word, but you know, that joins us together, makes us one, that you don't need those words. And again, you know, talking about my children, I remember when my eldest and my second one, and my second son didn't speak so early as my eldest. And I suddenly realised the reason is because he didn't need to. And it didn't matter what he wanted or he needed. My eldest son knew intrinsically what he needed. So he became perhaps a bit lazy because he didn't need to speak. But isn't that fascinating? That we don't even need words to connect. I mean, I think that's fascinating. That, you know, and it doesn't make any difference who you are or what intellectual standing you have. You don't need to have a word to connect. And that's for me, is very deep.
And we don't need to be very similar either. Right? God bless you. So what we're talking about is that
Pretty.
Oh,
Guapa, yeah. There you go. That's what we're talking about.
Yeah.
You know, what we're talking about is, can we connect to another human being in spite of not knowing them, in spite of having a different life connection, life experience, in spite of having a different culture or religion or gender or set of beliefs? Is that possible?
Yeah.
Oh, yes.
I just had this story I want to share, if it's okay. I was a social worker with a refugee family, and I speak Danish, and I don't know, I think they were from, well, we didn't speak the same language, and I've been with them for 2 months, and they didn't speak English, and we tried, and it was nice to be there. Then we had to go to the commune.
Municipality helps.
Because they want to check out how is it going with this family. And the lady, she asked, after a while, she asked, well, how do you speak with them? How do you speak with them when you don't speak the same language? And I was like, well, we do. I don't know, we do. We are connected. And it was wonderful, because I had this, well, I don't speak their language, but we really are connected. So, yeah. And I never gave it a thought before she asked.
See, isn't it interesting that a lot of us assume, and I forget, okay, I forget about this fact, but some of us assume at times that for us to connect, we need to have something in common. Something. We need to both teach the 3 principles. We both need to come to the same political views. We need to be affiliated with the same religion. And it's just so nice to remember that that's just a huge misunderstanding. Did you want to say something?
Yeah, hi, I'm Annie. I just wanted to say, I think it comes from a very basal intuition, if we're connected with ourselves, that you draw like-minded people or draw people with that same sort of empathy, this recognition that goes way deep between consciousness, from my point of view, you know. And it can be across the board, as you say, not actually understanding from a child to an older person. There's sort of some empathetic attraction.
It's like a resonance, isn't it?
Yes, it's resonance. Thank you.
Some
that's the word.
children,
Resonance.
babies,
Yeah.
it's
Just
they don't
there.
have language, they don't have political beliefs, they don't have any kind of whatever just yet, or any influences. They're just generally children, aren't they? They don't have language or anything. And there's a connection so much with some children, isn't there? And other children, it's like not quite resonating quite as well as possibly others. Same with all people. It's fascinating, no matter what. It's there or it isn't, perhaps, as much.
I love the word you said, resonance,
Mm,
because
it's
it
kind of like a
feels like there's
vibration.
vibes in the air.
Yeah.
And frequency.
Yeah, frequency, yes. And I think sometimes we can just twiddle it a bit and tune in, perhaps, or not.
We're going to go to the back and then to you.
I think we sometimes have, I do anyway, I'm not ever about we, but I think probably it's universal, prejudices against accents or languages. For instance, when I used to visit Spain on holiday and people would be speaking in Spanish, even though I understood a little bit, I would immediately just zone out because I had this assumption that I didn't understand. And I couldn't pick out anything and I couldn't understand it, so I would just zone out. But it's also, we do it even in Dublin City, like the inner city kids would have a very strong Dublin accent that's very, hard to understand. And you might see a gang of them stand on the corner and you cross the road and walk around. They might, I don't know, they might be whatever, I don't know. But you'd make an assumption based on their accent, or you'd make an assumption about people based on how they're dressed, or some people on their colour, or their religion, or whatever it is that you were saying there. And so now that I'm conscious of my prejudices, I didn't think I was prejudiced, but now that I'm conscious of my prejudices, I think, well, what if I couldn't, for instance, I don't know the difference between a Galician accent and a Valencian accent and a Madrid accent. I don't see those. So why do I see the difference in the Irish accents? The English accents or the English-speaking accents? And why do I make assumptions about people just because I think I can hear them? So I think, what if I was deaf? What if I was deaf and couldn't hear their accent? How would I connect with that people? What would I think about that person? Or what if I was blind and I wouldn't see their colour or their clothes or their shape or their size, or what if I was blind? How would I connect with that person? And I realised the prejudices would just fall away if I couldn't see or hear, or if I didn't have those lenses or those blinkers on. My prejudices would fall away and I would just connect with the person. I wouldn't have a thought about them. I wouldn't have any agenda. I wouldn't, nothing. It would just be, are you a nice person or are you not? That's all it comes down to. How do your actions? And and even that then now I'm understanding is their actions are it's how I interpret their actions.
And young children are like that, aren't they? They don't have any prejudices. It doesn't matter what colour, what size, what accent they cry in. They connect on a completely different level in a way, with no concepts about who the other person is or what they're carrying or what their background is or where they come from. It just happens, doesn't it?
Could we have her and then we'll have you, Jennifer? Yes, because she was raising her hand. Go ahead.
When you were speaking, I was just reminded in the beginning when I stumbled across the principles and I started to watch videos of people talking about it, and I saw this ease in everyone who was talking about the principles. I saw this like presence and genuinity, like humanness. And to me, I saw this light in everybody's eyes, and it called upon my own light. Like it was like I was drawn, and I started to see how this is who we are. This is what we have in common. Like no one excluded. We have our nature in common. Our true nature is like starting to see this vast ocean of sameness behind the surface of whatever my thinking or other people's thinking is. And that was a safety. That was like, what's the word? I've started to feel completely safe with anybody because I started to see how we shared our nature. And it was so funny because suddenly everybody in the buses and everybody started to look so beautiful, and I was like, oh my God, everybody's so sweet. What is this new planet? And I think what I saw in people who were speaking about the principles is this peace that falls upon people when you start to see how safe we are, and that it's true for any one of us. Yeah.
Thank you. Jonathan?
I didn't know it's almost gone. It was one of those kind of flashes in the moment, but no, not at all. I think it was something to do what I heard when you beautifully shared just now about what if I was blind, or what if I was deaf, and what sparked up for me was what if I had a quiet mind just in that minute, because I'm noticing more and more for myself how this beautiful kind of connection happens like that. And if I may say so, Sue, I had a wonderful experience with you on arrival the other night, if I can share that. It was really just so gorgeous that we're standing.
Be careful, because my husband.
He was there too.
I don't know where this is going.
When we were bedfellows, But I walked into the salon upstairs when we were just grouping up as people who were going to share the dropout groups, and and just standing there, we kind of just caught a glimpse of each other or something, and I felt this incredible warmth, this wonderful connection with you. And I was just in that bubble, and I don't know, I've been, just playing with this a little bit in my own mind. I really can't say whether I was going to shake your hand or whether I was going to hug you or kiss you or whatever. I just don't know, because none of that was kind of hanging around. But I knew I felt beautifully connected with you and very drawn to you. And then you let off a wonderful firework display. It was just so gorgeous, in saying, don't come near me, you're not allowed to touch me, you're not allowed to hug me, you're not allowed to kiss me. And for a minute there was a rebuff, and I just noticed in the unfolding that happened in the next minutes, to me it was just so beautiful, and it taught me a lot that I still can't easily put into words, and I'm not trying to work it out, but I know I've got a powerful feeling about it, that just in that moment, all this thinking came up about myself. Oh, see, there you go again, you bombard people, you latch onto people, you do this and you do that, and then it flashed into, who the hell does she think she is? You can't do this, you can't touch me, you can't do this, you can't do that. And woven in there a lovely respect for your faith and religious sensitivities and all of that. It got very meshed up. But like a flash, by the time we'd gone through the doors and down the stairs, I was in love with you again. You know, it was incredible just because my mind went quiet again. And I can honestly say that just as I stood there, and I think we looked at each other again, and I was in love with you. That's clumsy, you know, because I'm just trying to express something in my heart and in my being. And wow, it taught me so much about intimacy because it was better than any hug I've ever had. Really. And I just kind of cherish that, and it's such a lesson to me. It reminds me of when I first met Jackie last year in VIVA. But, you know, we looked at each other and we were in love and we fell into each other's arms and we moulded into one. And it was just so beautiful, and an experience I will never forget. But this was a lovely learning too, that even without touch, whether that's a handshake or whatever, there was this embrace. And I just kind of know while I'm here this week that is available with every human being on this planet. I know I will forget it, and I know I have forgotten it before. But I absolutely know that now without a shadow of a doubt, because it was gifted to me in that encounter.
I love that, thank you. Before we go to you, Rafael, you know, I think I love what you said, because we don't need to go blind or deaf, right? Fortunately. What happens is that as the mind quiets down, which is part of what the mind does by nature, then this happens. We just see each other, and we see the purity and the health in each other, and we see that beyond our beliefs and beyond our past, beyond our conditions, there is that you describe so beautifully. Yes, Rafael?
Well, in our family we have an experience of direct contact with people who are, well, my daughter-in-law is from Turkey. So we have, in the development of the relationship of my son and my daughter-in-law, we have to meet her father and her mother. They don't speak English, they don't speak Spanish, I don't speak Turkey. So we have no language to refer between us. But they are Muslims. Well, we have a different life in Spain. And we are Catholic. But in the very first moment we saw them, we felt a profound connection. We have met several times because our son and our daughter are married now, and we have one son. And we could have never speak one word in the language to the other, but we always feel wonderful when we are together. Sometimes we have gone, for example, her mother and my wife and me to shopping, and we get along beautifully. Something that is a connection made with a lot of differences, but something very profound that get us unite us as human beings. That's what I wanted to share.
I do actually want to say something, because I want to come back to what you said, Jonathan, because it might be interesting to hear what went on in my head.
Yeah, I'd love to.
You have to leave once I've finished. You can't stay in here, okay? Having you hanging around all the time. So, you're right, you know, I saw Jonathan across the room.
You cheater!
And you know, you have such a warmth about you that I was almost like a magnet going towards you. I felt that warmth as well. And I went towards you, and then I noticed that he started to move, and I thought, oh no. So just to say a bit of background behind it, I'm a religious Jewish madman, woman. And the level of my religiosity, and not everyone does this, but we don't hug a man or usually shake hands as well or touch. I mean, you know, if it happens, it happens, and I wouldn't, if someone felt really, really angry about it, I would shake their hands. I would really not hug, but, you know, that's how it is. And in an environment like this, my husband and I are more than likely, Basil, you know, also from Israel. Yeah, but we're about the only religious Jews here, so, you know, I felt like, you know, I have to remind people, I have to tell people. And there are certain places that I go, and it's not something I need to say because it's like a given. But here it was like, I need to be like almost on my guard, and I could see Jonathan getting up, and I thought, oh no, I've got to start saying something. And so I started with this, as you say, my fireworks. Don't touch, don't you know, like, don't you remember, you know? And it was like, and at that moment I felt like we'd disconnected, like I'd broken this cord between us that I'd been, you know, following along, you know, going towards. This light that I'd gone towards, and I'd suddenly turned off the light in the middle of the room, and that was it. And then suddenly I just realised, oh, this is crazy, you know, so what? You know, I wouldn't want to hurt anybody, so if it was that important to someone, and I let it go. And I don't know, but that's when, you know, I felt like there was the connection again, this deep connection, this love between us. That, you know, I felt the whole time, whenever I see you, except for those minutes. And I think that isn't that so funny as well, that, you know, that we can so easily go in and out of something with our own ideas, our own beliefs, our own opinions or whatever. And it sort of led me back to what you were saying before, because about being, you know, deaf or blind or something. And I thought, well, how would I know? Because if I'm deaf, I wouldn't know at the moment. I'm not blind or deaf, so I wouldn't know what it would feel like. So what if, really? You know, it's the unknown. I don't know how I'd react if I was deaf or blind, and I'm sure that deaf and blind people still have opinions and are judgmental, you know. So I'm guessing, you know. Yeah, I don't know. I said that, but anyway, I just felt it.
I suppose I didn't mean deaf.
No, I know.
It's just, what if I couldn't hear?
Yeah,
the
no, I understand.
What if I couldn't see
Yeah.
the difference?
Yeah.
That's really.
No, that's you know, I think that's more, not more. I think that's the point. That's the main thing. It's not that if I was a blind person or something. It's if I didn't see that, and I think that's what happens, isn't it? When we're in that connection. And then when we're not in that connection, that's when we feel the judgment, and when you were talking, what you said just now about the families not speaking the same language, I just thought, well, yeah, that's great, isn't it? Because how can you argue about something that you can't speak? You know, so what's the point of what is there to argue about? That's kind of great, isn't it?
Yeah, you know, I had an experience that did not involve humans. How much time do we have?
Good.
5 minutes?
No, 5 to 10 minutes.
Isn't it a 9:15? Officially the time is over.
Okay. Well, the point is that there's this beautiful book called Kitchen Table Wisdom. And Kitchen Table Wisdom was written by a doctor in the San Francisco Bay Area, Dr. Naomi Raymond, and she has, it's a beautiful book. You can read like 2 pages at a time, and you're done for the day. And there's this one story where she talks about a deer and a hunter and how they're walking along the forest and they notice each other's beauty. And they notice that they're the same, and so they start playing along in the forest for some time, and they're having a great time. And then they remember one of them is a deer and the other one is a hunter. And so, I think the story, your story, is even when we remember that one of them is the hunter and the other one is a deer, because we share something more profound than what we do, and what we believe, and how we look, we can connect deeply in the next moment. Yes.
Hi, my name's Graham. Nice to connect with you all. It's a relationship starting up already, isn't it? I've listened very, very intently. And I was listening to what Jack had to say about a relationship earlier on, and he was saying that he got a little bit detached from his relationship and he went to a psychic because he felt they listened more. And the first relationship was all surely is the mother-child. That's the first relationship we begin, and that's the natural one. That's your most natural relationship I think you'll ever have, because it's the first one and it's part of the creation. You're creating. Then you get into life, I get into life, and I'm fearful of relationships. And I've never met anybody yet that's not fearful of relationships. And I get a lot of people talk to me about this. And sometimes it goes well, sometimes it doesn't go well. But my perception of the other person in a relationship can be quite distorted to how I'm feeling. How I feel at 11 o'clock in the morning and how I feel at 4 o'clock in the afternoon on that relationship can be 2 different things. How I've slept, how I've eaten, how I've whatever. And my truth is that I think anybody I've ever wants to look good, wants to sound good, wants to feel good, and wants to come across okay. But in the truth of reality, it's not quite like that. Because our body language, the way we act, portrays first impressions. Do you talk to somebody? Do you not talk to somebody? Why did I first meet that person? How did I first meet that person? All that stuff going on. So I think relationship is probably one of the biggest words in a lot of people's lives. But I think the biggest point I'd like to make with myself, I'm not capable of having a relationship with anyone else until I've got one with myself.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Yes.
Just a little comment. It's rare from my own experience, but just sometimes, once in a while, you come across somebody and you know you've met them before. And it's a soul-to-soul connection, and it seems to me that it's from beyond, before time began, sort of something in eternity.
Were you in one of my past lives then?
Could be.
You know, I think it's the quieting of the mind, right? Like when the mind is quiet and we are, like that feeling of, you almost feel like you're not part of the picture, like you're so much into another conversation or, looking at the sunset or, connecting with a cat or whatever, and you just sort of forget you're there, you're part of the whole thing. There's such a deep appreciation of the other person. So this point of when we are well, everything just sort of goes well. But it's just so nice to remember, to know that it is possible that you can feel really crappy for 4 hours or 8 hours. And because there's this resiliency in us that can shift at any moment, right? And you know, it's interesting because I have had moments where I have had very little sleep or I'm hungry. Generally, I don't do well when I'm hungry. But even when I've been hungry, I've had moments of clarity and peace of mind. I've also had moments of the opposite, when I'm well rested sometimes and I just eaten, right? Because there's something so, there's something that transcends that, which is this human spirit that I call it sometimes, or, you know, for those of us that are really familiar with the 3 principles, it's just, we are the principles in action all the time. And so kind of like the story that you shared, Jonathan, you can be kind of like disconnected or just kind of off a little bit. And the next moment can breathe new life, can breathe possibility of connection. And all of a sudden you see a person new again.
I think that's so really amazing, is that you can go in and out of that, and you can, from one moment to the next, you can be completely in love with someone and then not in love with them, and back into it again and out of it. And that for me is like, wow, look at that. I don't like him at the moment, but you know, half an hour later, well, he looks really cool, doesn't he? He looks, you know, he's quite nice. Talking about you, dear. and for me, that has been over 30 years of it. But honestly, for the, you know, the first good 2/3, I had not the faintest idea what was happening, and I would take on board everything that he said and was making something out of it. Like he was the one, you see, that made me feel that way. And then even in that, there was connection sometimes, you know, that I honestly probably, well, no, not probably, I honestly didn't see. I didn't see it. I knew that there was something that I quite liked about him, so that's why I stuck there, but I didn't know what it was until I came across the principles. And then I see him more often than not as being a really nice guy. And then sometimes I don't. And it's funny because that's the time when the words come out, and then there's an argument, and then I'm really into taking everything that he said very, very seriously. I think it was Jackie, I'm going to bring you into this because it's your fault. As usual. But you know, my husband tells these jokes. And I never found them funny. And other people would laugh, and I thought, well, they're just laughing because they're being polite. Because he's a nice, quiet guy, you know, and so they need to make him feel a bit better. You know. So they would laugh, and I never saw it. And then Jackie said something to me once about, well, she said when she realised that she wasn't laughing at her husband's jokes, it's because she was taking life so seriously. And I thought, that's a stupid thing. What does she know? No, I'm not taking life seriously. He doesn't. It's not funny. It really isn't funny. And then I think the next day actually he told the joke, and I thought it was hilarious. I said, "That's really good for you." And then it clicked. You know, and I thought, yeah, the old cow's right. I love you, Jackie. No, I just seriously, I thought, you know, she's right. It's true. It's true. When I take life seriously, and I get into all the words, all the business inside it, you know, it sort of gets all scrunched up and make, you know. Then I think it's him. Time to clap.